Everything rises and falls on leadership. The ability to lead well is fueled by living your cause and purpose. This podcast will equip you with the tools to do just that. Live and lead with cause and purpose. And now, author of the book, The Anatomy of Leadership, and our host, Chris Comeaux.
Hello and welcome to TCN Talks. I'm really excited today. This is where we do our top news stories of the month. I got Cordt Kassner with me. Welcome, Cordt.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be back.
Man, we're doing something innovative today. I give you credit because you're like, Chris, you really need to meet the GeriPal guys. So we actually have Eric Widera and we have Alex Smith with us, the guys who actually host the GeriPal podcast. Welcome, gents.
Oh, it's great to be on. I'm a huge fan of TCN Podcast. I listen to it all the time.
An honor to be on. Thank you so much, Chris and Cordt.
Well, thank you for what you guys do for the whole hospice and palliative care field. And so this is a podcast within a podcast. We're airing it on TCN Talks. And then, of course, it's going to air on their platform at GeriPal. Let me read real quick from Eric and Alex's bio. So Eric Widera is a professor of medicine, clinical educator in Division of Geriatrics at the University of California, San Francisco, so UCSF. His main goal is to improve the care provided to elderly patients with severe chronic terminal conditions through program development, educational innovations. Dr. Widera is the director of Hospice and Palliative Service at the San Francisco VA Center, which is pretty cool. Past board of director member for the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, AHPM, and past president and chair of the Board of Association of Directors of Geriatrics Academic Programs. Easy for me to say. Eric has been the recipient of numerous grants and awards, including the Geriatric Academic Career Award, the Hastings Center Cunoff-Dixon Physician Award. Love that. Dr. Janet Bull, my mentor, actually got that as well. AHPM Hospice and Palliative Care Medicine Leaders Under 40 Award, AHPM PDIA Palliative Medicine National Leadership Award, and he is the co-founder of GeriPal, as well as ePrognosis, an online set of prognosis calculators for the elderly. Gosh, Eric, and you look like you're still 20, man. What's the deal?
We're young at heart.
Absolutely. I love that. And Alex, I want you to read your Hawaiian name. I love that there's no way I'll try to pronounce it, but Alex Smith is how I know him. But Alex, what is your Hawaiian name?
It's pronounced like it's spelled. It's Alexander Keli'imoianu Ohaliakala Smith.
So Alex was born in Hilo, Hawaii. Sadly, his family moved from there to East Lansing, Michigan when he was 6 months old. He's a proud graduate of the University of Michigan. And though in sporting events, he roots for both Michigan State University and the University of Michigan. That's got to be fun to watch a game with you. Dr. Smith receives his medical school training at UC Berkeley, UCSF Joint Medical Program. He completed a primary care internal medicine residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital, followed by 2 fellowships, 1-year clinical fellowship in palliative medicine at BWH and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, followed by a 2-year general internal medicine fellowship at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, including an MPH from Harvard School of Public Health. Dr. Smith returned to UCF in 2008 in faculty in the Division of Geriatrics. Guys, both incredible bios. I have one question just to start, and then we'll go into the joint podcast. But talk about GeriPal, because most of our listeners are more on the leadership side. So just how did GeriPal come to be?
Man, we actually started off as a blog, and I think both Alex and I, we talk about sometimes we're unfocused. We were in a meeting talking about, I forget what the meeting was, and we just came up with an idea, like, wouldn't it be great to have like a place where we could just put our own thoughts down, where it wouldn't take like a year to get published? And that was the initial, like, that's how the blog started. And in 2000, that was like what, 2008, Alex?
2009, I think we started blogging.
2009 and 2016.
Yep.
How did the podcast start, Alex?
Well, I think, content is king when you're doing these sorts of things. And we got a little tired of writing blog posts. And, in 2000 to 2010, it seemed like everybody had a blog, but then that kind of went away, right? And then podcasts were on the rise, and we're more tied to the message than the medium. And so some people were like, we should do a podcast. Eric's like, yeah, we should do a podcast. Let's get Alex, bring your guitar. We'll talk about bed alarms, saying free fallen, We talked about battle arms. And that was the beginning. We just bought a mic, put it in the middle of the table, and started talking. And we have not looked back. It's been so fun interviewing some of the best and brightest minds who are doing really innovative clinical work, who are doing really cutting edge research, who are leading the way, as we'll talk about today on this podcast.
Well said, gents.
2.5 million downloads later, we are still loving doing this podcast. It is, it's a hobby of mine and Alex's, and it's like one of the key things I look forward to.
Now, right back at you guys. I mean, so we're going to segue now into your podcast, but I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. You're giving a voice to the people that are closest to the mission, the people doing the work. And so I think it's kind of a cool partnership that we're doing this podcast together. So let's now segue into your podcast.
Welcome to the GeriPal Podcast. Alex, this is more than the GeriPal Podcast. I forgot. I got to let you introduce yourself, Alex.
Oh, this is Alex Smith.
This is Eric Widera. I don't even know how we start this anymore because this is confusing.
That's weird. We have like
because
two
we're
podcasts.
doing a combo podcast.
This is a podcast within a podcast. This is like, man, we're making history here.
This is new for us. We're building this airplane as we fly it. So we're delighted to welcome Chris Comeaux, who is a leader, coach, author in hospice and palliative care. His book is called Anatomy of Leadership, and he's the host of TCNtalks with frequent guest host. Cordt, is that get appropriate? Yeah, guest host.
Yes.
Maybe? And TCNtalks is a podcast that's focused on leadership, strategy, innovation, and the future of serious illness care. Chris, welcome to GeriPal.
Man, thanks for having us. This is really cool. Cordt had tweaked me, and I'm like, what if we call these guys and say, what if we do a podcast within a podcast? And here we are.
And I guess we're joining your podcast too, because these will be simultaneously, well, they released around the same time. Our other guest is Cordt Kassner, who is a hospice leader and CEO of Hospice Analytics, which provides in-depth data on hospice quality, utilization, and access, and also publishes Hospice and Palliative Care Today, which is a daily email newsletter about the hottest topics in hospice and palliative care. Cordt, welcome to the GeriPal Podcast.
Alex and Eric, thanks so much. This is such an honor to be here with you guys.
I love this too because I hear both of your voices. It's like I actually am an avid listener to TCNtalks. I think it brings up a lot of really good points as far as like the last one I heard was around certificate of need. We're going to get into all this stuff so much. I have questions. We're going to do something different. Yeah. We're going to do some roundtable questions, just going around talking about hospice leadership quality. But before we do that, on GeriPal, we always start off with a song request. Who has the song request?
I have a song request, and so it's Love Hurts. I'll tell you why after you perform it.
Oh, after? Okay, well, that's good.
Isn't there more than one version? There's like Everly Brothers, and there's like
Nazareth.
Nazareth. That was
the version about ready to be performed is now going to be my favorite.
I am not going to sing in the high vocal range of Nazareth. Here's a little bit. Love hurts, love scars, love wounds, and mars any heart, not tough or strong enough to take a lot of pain, take a lot of pain. Love is like a cloud, it holds a lot of rain. Love hurts. Ooh, love hurts.
Stay to the end of the podcast. Alex is going to do the Nazareth version in
right.
high voice.
That was awesome, Alex. Well, first off, you guys remind us we're taping this the day before Valentine's Day, so it had to be some type of love theme. And I thought this work is so sacred to us, and it hurts, but we love it and we do it. And we've been pioneers creating palliative care, creating a hospice across the country. And there are days of amazing joy and there's days of amazing pain. So that's why I chose it.
Oh, that was beautiful. Well, we're going to do something different than our usual podcast on our end, is that we're going to do kind of roundtable discussions as far as questions, and we're going to pose questions to each other. And I'm really excited because, again, I'm a very avid listener to TCN Talks. So I think I get to start this. And my question is, I'm going to first open up to Cordt. Would love to hear others. But one of the reasons I love TCN Talks is I get to hear about all the best hospice news that's coming around. Cordt, my question is going to turn to you. What are the kind of the top news stories that you've covered recently?
Thanks for the question, Eric. It's like I said, it's such a pleasure being here with both of you, because the GeriPal podcasts we cover in the newsletter on a regular basis. We've covered over 50 stories from GeriPal.
That is not the only reason I listen to your podcast.
but it's so true. It's such an overlap, and I find myself now. For example, Alex, you introduced me to Lauren Hunt, researcher at UCSF. The first thing I do is I go to Hospice Palliative Care Today. I log in and I type in Lauren Hunt. I'm like, well, I mean, we've probably covered, and sure enough, she pops up like 8 times for awards and different interviews that she's done. And it's such a great resource to fact check and quickly figure out what's going on in the field. Mm-hmm. I've used some of those search results from Hospice and Palliative Care Today, dumped them into ChatGPT or Grok, and so, summarize these 50 articles or whatever, and it creates a great search engine that's not the entire World Wide Web. It's focused on hospice and palliative care stories. So such a fun resource, and we complement each other so well with covering the GeriPal and other stories. In terms of our top stories, we've been doing the newsletter 2 years now. We average about 5,000 reads or clicks per story. We track how many times people click on the original source story, because that's what we want to do. We want to provide enough information to get the reader to the source document and then read the source document. Well, if we average 5,000 clicks, our top story so far was a compilation that we pulled together on medical aid and dying. It had over 14,000 clicks, which in our readership, that's a lot. So it was really taking a look at links to the state departments of health annual reports for the dozen, I think 15 states that were medical aid and dying legal, and just a way to compare the information that's being released and collected and reported. So that was fascinating to me, because we track those click rates to look for more stories in those most popular areas. The second category that came up was dementia research. So Monday through Friday, Dr. Joy Berger does a great job as our editor-in-chief, pulling relevant news stories during the week. Saturday, Kathy Wagner, as our assistant editor, helps me collect a dozen peer-reviewed journal articles. And I thought,
give me some examples of them. Let's drive into our audience. Like, what are some of these stories around dementia that your audience is kind of pulling up, thinking about?
It's been fascinating. The most read story around dementia was around falls. So emergency department or hospital admissions, and tying that to dementia and end of life care and advanced care planning, which was fascinating to me. I love that our readership is interested in the research. We've run articles on the HOPE tool, of course, the quality measures that were released last October. That was garnered about 10,000. The HOPE tool is going to be replacing the hospice item set and will be a transparent, publicly reported set of quality measures for hospices. Super excited to have that becoming available as an update and improvements to what we currently have.
What's in the HOPE tool? Like, what are the quality measures in there? Are there?
That's a great question.
Management's a big one. Some aspects of pain control. How quickly do we get out there? especially when there's some type of crisis. We're going to do a whole podcast, actually, Eric, coming up on that.
Oh, great. I don't want to steal the thunder on that. Do you think it's going to be better than what we have right now?
No.
Maybe I'm a little bit.
I mean, like today's broadcast. No, it won't be better. But if you need the hope better than hospice tool. Item set, yeah, I think it will be an improvement over hospice item set.
Yeah. The hospice item set, is that CMS's quality metric? Yeah, or what would you call it? Quality.
It's part of their quality assessment tools. There's the hospice item set that is pretty much gathered at the hospice level. So the hospice clinicians fill that out and submit it. And then there's the hospice CAHPS, which is the primary caregiver survey assessing quality of hospice that's completed by the caregiver 3 to 6 months after death of the loved one.
So those are two different hospice quality metrics.
Exactly.
And one of them, the first one that you mentioned, which is based more probably on organizational characteristics and utilization, is changing to be a new set of metrics called HOPE that you will be talking about. And you also have your own analytics. That's hospice analytics, which you mentioned in the intro. And that's different. That's yet a third window into hospice quality?
Correct. What I do with hospice analytics is taking a look at claims and cost reports and these quality measures and presenting that information, making that available to folks. Something else that's really interesting is I designed a National Hospice Locator webpage. And first that started out as a directory of every known hospice location. You'd think that would be easy to do, but it's incredibly difficult, and nobody really does that. Membership organizations tend to list their members. State departments of health list hospices in their state, but if you're thinking about it nationally, it's actually pretty complicated and rare. So we started off with just a directory, but 2 years ago, we created a quality matrix that uses 8 different measures across 5 different tools to create a hospice quality rating for every hospice in the country. So if you search San Francisco, it's not only a directory of hospices that serve San Francisco. They're sorted, the rank sort is highest quality to lowest.
All right,
so that's another way of quality.
I got a question for you. If I had to choose, either go to Medicare Compare for my hospice star rating, or I can go to remind our listeners what the site is.
National Hospice Locator.
National Hospice Locator. Which one should they go to?
You know, it's a great question. Of course, I'm biased, and we'll say go to the National Hospice Locator.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
And
why is
part
that?
Part of the reason is because I'm using some of those Care Compare measures.
Uh-huh.
The best part about Care Compare is the transparency and that they put that information out. But one of the challenges with the star ratings in particular that you mentioned is only 27, 28% of hospices have calculated star scores. So the vast majority of hospices don't have one. And so that would leave the caregiver or the hospice patient at a loss if a hospice doesn't have enough surveys for CMS to calculate that score. So I approach it a little bit differently and create a score for every hospice. Every
hospice gets a score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd mentioned around the news stories is something you've had Ira Byock on GeriPal before, and he's talked about his strategic path forward. He calls his final point in his strategy the hospice brand, and being very proud of the hospice brand, what Chris typically calls mission moments in the TCN podcasts. And these are stories about family members describing their end-of-life experiences with loved ones in hospice, hospice leadership. There's all sorts of things that get wrapped into this hospice brand, and those tend to be among our top read stories. People are just excited to see some of the great work that our providers are doing around the country.
That's great. Well, I want to make sure we have time for everybody's questions. I'm going to pass it on. I think, Cordt, I think you asked the next question.
I've got a question particularly for Alex and Eric, but Chris as well. You've done so much in your GeriPal podcast to shine a light on the real challenges that we face. Things like burnout among clinicians, racial and access inequities, resource constraints, better prognostic tools like e-prognosis. What's one worry or concern that each of you have around the future of the field? What keeps you up at night? And on the flip side of the coin, what gets you excited? What makes a difference? What's something you've learned through your podcasts that make a difference in improving our daily work?
What worries me the most right now is, growing up in hospice, like you said, like you were bringing up, it's the mission, it's the heart of hospice that motivates me to continue to do this work. I'm covering our hospice unit right now. I do palliative care consults. I think both of them are they're very rewarding. I think the biggest challenge is just the sheer amount of money and investment, and the heart of what we do is not necessarily a primary motivator for some of these businesses. And since you brought up Ira's article, we've both done podcasts with Ira. It is hard to ignore fraud nowadays in the industry, especially with hospice, and especially in certain states like California, where we don't need 2,000 hospices in LA County. Like that's crazy. Clearly fraud. Like it's just, you don't need 170 hospices in one building in Van Nuys. And I do think as a field, we have to take ownership of some of these problems. And we have to advocate, and we have to advocate very loudly. And I love that folks like Ira are pushing for us as a field. Like we don't control everything, but man, we can advocate, and we should not neglect our voices. And I think that's the part that gives me the most promise and hope, is that I don't think it's like, we just did a podcast on, palliative care light, which was like a derogatory term potentially for like these community-based hospice or palliative care organizations that are very much focused on improving access to palliative care, but through different models that we're used to in academics, using potentially a lot of smaller teams. Again, I encourage you to listen to that podcast. Certainly a lot of investment going on into that field. But what I left with that is, like, even in those settings, like the palliative care providers, the experts from social workers to physicians, it is important that we have a voice. And I always think back to Diane Myers saying, if you're not at the table, wait, was it Alex? If you're
not at the table, you're on the menu.
If you're not on the table, you're on the menu.
That's right.
I'll popcorn it to you, Alex.
Well, mine's, I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to put on my researcher hat as the audience, listeners, and you all know I'm a clinician researcher, which means that I get like 80% of my funding through the National Institutes of Health or other research organizations. It's grants, right? I'm a grant-funded researcher. It's a tough time to be a grant-funded researcher. And this is not an issue that's specific to geriatrics or palliative care, or aging research, serious illness research. This runs the gamut. But, because this is like the community, and I'm very committed to mentoring, I direct our T32 fellowship in aging research, and also part of the Ascent Collaboratory. It's a national NIH-funded research infrastructure grant that provides like career development type awards and pilot awards. I direct the pilot core for that. It's a tough time for the junior people. They're the ones I worry about the most. People who are trying to get into the field of serious illness research or aging research. it's so hard for them because many universities aren't hiring. Many and the NIH grants are just so it's tough to get them, and we don't know what the funding lines are anymore. The priorities are shifting. There are a lot of people who I know, who I mentor, whose areas are just being erased by the NIH, forbidden, you can't do this, grants are erased, taken back. And then there's this whole yo-yo effect. Well, then there's a court battle and then they get it back and and then it gets taken away again. It's really tough. So I worry that we may lose a generation. I hope not. I hope it's just a short period. And I hope that there are people who find ways to support those junior researchers who are trying to get into the field and get jobs and get grants and get started. And I'm hopeful that, we have some mechanisms to do that. And I still worry that it's going to have a chilling effect on people who might otherwise have gone into research, will now instead focus on other things, clinical work, education, which is great. But we really need the science in order to advance the field. We need science to say, we've tested this, we've studied this. This is the right thing to do. This is better than that. And whoa, we thought this was good, but turns out we were wrong. We've been doing it wrong all along. So that's what I worry about. How about you, Chris?
Gosh, what do I worry about? Man, I was thinking of Eric's first question of Cordt about like top news stories of the month or top stories. I mean, we go through Cordt, 72,000 probably in a year. And I flag like 100 a month. So that's 1,200 out of a year. And I think that's the challenge, right? How do you bring it down to one thing? We do have what I use in my framework, Alex. And when we do the top news stories of the month, we actually did 5 years of research, and there are 8 challenges that we know, 8 challenge categories or themes that every hospice and palliative care program is faced with. So every month, I organize the articles I flag based upon those categories. So my direct answer should be these basically 8 categories: the mission moments, reimbursement challenges, competition to be aware of, workforce challenges, patient and family future customer demographics and trends, regulatory and political challenges, technology and innovation challenges, the speed of change and resiliency that humans could deal with, one that I call kind of the human factor, and then I always have my catch-all, just Chris category. So those categories, every month I'm flagging articles that build kind of my own research behind it. And so any of those, we could do probably our podcast on any of those themes, but any follow-up questions to me on those broad categories?
I think we'll have some follow-up questions as we go. I certainly have some that will expand on some of those categories.
And one more I'd add, Alex, because when we were in the green room the first time we all got to meet, I'm very passionate about leadership. It kind of goes in that. So, John Maxwell is one of the guys I've always read and kind of followed my whole life. He says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So, what's heavy on your heart about research? It all comes down to leadership. So those young people that may feel jaded right now, if they will just, whatever pathway opens up for them, if they'll go to school there and just keep going to school there, your sphere of influence will grow. And you never know how those things that feel like little side trails may come back, and you'll harvest things that can help you for the big game that maybe you thought was going to be where you're going to be from the very get-go. That all comes back to the whole journey of leadership, why I wrote the book, The Anatomy of Leadership, to give people a framework.
Alex, I just comment on your thought around the researchers, and I really appreciate the concern about the next generation and where this is going. And I'll be honest, I thought to myself, how exciting that we have a next generation of researchers interested in gerontology, interested in hospice and palliative care and end-of-life care. Like, I probably all 4 of us have been around long enough. There was a time there weren't very many people lining up at the door to enter into research in these fields. And it's exciting that there are people interested in it.
Alex, I'm going to ground this. Do you feel like there's more or less right now, given the uncertainty? Like, people, are they wanting to commit many years of their life to research fellowships? And
I think it's still early to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the major change came with the change in the federal administration, which is what, a year and a half in?
Yeah.
Or a year? God, it feels like longer.
It is. It does, but you're right. It's probably like a year and a quarter. by the time the show airs anyway.
So I think it's tough to say.
But you're hopeful.
I agree, Cordt. I'm hopeful, and I love the fresh new ideas that are bubbling up from these new investigators looking at these problems that are seemingly intractable with fresh eyes. And I worry that some of them just are going to be so disillusioned with what they read and what they hear about and what they hear from other junior people, and the fact that just a lot of universities aren't hiring researchers right now. It's tough to get a job, you know?
Alex, Cordt and I had Ira on, and we did a podcast as almost like a gift for the holidays to people, just kind of time with Ira from his heart. And he said something so profound. They sat around a fire in Colorado at I guess it was in Estes Park, right, Cordt? And there was no research. There were no textbooks. There were no classes. You think about the early days of where he was and think of where we are today. The challenges, the mountain range of challenges in front of them in the early 80s, et cetera, we have different challenges. And that same spirit that they kind of address them with, we shouldn't let these challenges take us out. What will they say about us a generation from now, just like how we're talking to the IRAs, future when Alex and Eric are on somebody else's podcast 20 years from now. What did you guys do in 2026 when those challenges came? I feel like this is our time.
Don't miss part 2 of this episode coming this Friday.